Mexico's president says the Trump administration didn't consult her government before designating 6 drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
6 of those 8 groups are cartels based here in Mexico. The 2 household names would be the Jalisco cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. And look, the Mexican government is not in favor of this designation. They say that this will only harm the joint abilities of both countries to attack these cartels.
ABC's Matt Rivers. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has deployed National Guard troops to secure state-run prisons amid a wildcat strike by corrections workers. Hearing from the Menendez brothers a month ahead of a judge's decision on their conviction.
In a phone call from behind bars, Lyle and Eric Menendez told a TMZ podcast hosted by their attorney, Mark Garagos, and TMZ's Harvey Levin that they are eagerly awaiting their resentencing hearing set for next month, which was delayed from December to then January and now March.
I think we're mostly dealing with the reactions of our family who are very anxious, and the delays are very upsetting for them.
They claim in the podcast they have evolved over the 35 years that they've been in prison. Alex Stone, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Life-saving mission in San Bernardino, California. Fire crews came to the rescue of a woman who got stuck in a narrow section of an underground storm drain. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
My doctor told me my blood pressure is borderline. I figured I could worry about it or do something about it. So I took control with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula. It works safely and naturally to help maintain healthy blood pressure with a custom blend of garlic, vitamins, and minerals. And it's odor-free. I'm taking charge with Garlic Healthy Blood Pressure Formula.
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The term natural references only the garlic in the product. Use as directed.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
5:05 now with still a few snow flurries out there this afternoon. I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU News update. The storm going to clear out, though, and should see some sunny skies tomorrow. We'll get to your weather forecast in just a minute. Well, state lawmakers have passed a bill that would take away the public's right to recoup legal fees whenever they must go to court to obtain public records improperly withheld by the government. Now, members of the public never had an opportunity to testify for or against the latest version of legislation. That's because the provision related to legal fees was tacked on to an already existing bill that had already passed through a committee. In fact, one state senator said that they didn't notice changes to the bill and thus voted in favor of it before realizing that it was bad policy. Now, House Bill 69 will still allow the public to get attorney fees if they can prove the government acted in bad faith. In other news, a crack or a defect in a firework tube is what's being blamed for that misfire that injured 27 people during the Stadium of Fire show at Lavelle Edwards Stadium last summer. Now, Provo Fire Marshal Lynn Schofield said the defect caused catastrophic failures that led to errant fireworks being shot into the crowd. Now, the mishap happened during the annual Independence Day celebration in Provo. The stadium was filled with thousands of spectators, and just after a military flyover, several people captured video of a small explosion on the west side of the south stands. Now, fireworks then shot into the stands and injured several people. Some of the fireworks also shot into the performers on the field. Now, at a press conference yesterday, Schofield said that the firework in question contained 36 tubes that once ignited were designed to go all off in succession. He said because, though, of the defect in one of the tubes, 22 of the 36 shots were fired that went in the direction other than where they should have gone. Now, he said the teams at Stadium of Fire did everything they could to ensure safety of the devices, but the problem appeared to have come from the manufacturer in China. Well, turning to college basketball, and an explosive night for the Aggies as Ian Martinez had 22 points and Utah State got a 105-57 win over San Jose State. It was a 48-point margin of victory for Utah State, its largest against a conference opponent since joining the Mountain West back in 2013. Head coach Jared Calhoun after the game praised the fans for coming out as the snowstorm was coming in.
For people to come and drive and spend the time and the energy and the money to come in here tonight, it's pretty awesome. And I thought the environment was really good. I thought the students once again brought it. And, you know, they really treated Josh, I thought, with the respect that he deserves. You know, that team last year was pretty special. There's only been 2 teams ever in the history of the school to win an NCAA tournament game. And, you know, I told Josh, as long as I'm the coach, which hopefully he's going to be for a long time, you know, he's always welcome. You know, he's a Class Act kid. And, you know, in this landscape, you can't, you know, as crazy as it sounds, you can't have, you know, any hard feelings for kids, because you're going to see more and more of this as the time goes.
Now, the Aggies will prepare for San Diego State now coming up on Saturday. A big matchup in the Spectrum. That game will be tipping off Saturday night. Well, weather-wise, going to continue to see a few snow flurries as the storm now pushes out of the area. We got a lot more snow than we were expecting as temperatures really never warmed up. And so this snow expected to now move out of the area, and that's going to leave us with cloudy skies overnight, temperatures around the mid-20s. And then tomorrow, sunny skies, highs in the high 30s, and then low 40s coming for Saturday and Sunday as we'll see a mix of sun and clouds. And news and weather brought to you by the Best of Northern Utah contest. It's back, presented by Alpine Cleaning and Restoration. Nominations are open now. Just go to bestofnorthernutah.com. And I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News Update.
Hi, I'm Wendy, co-founder of Bell Sculpt. I know what it's like to feel uncomfortable in your own skin, worrying about how you look, feeling drained, and just not like yourself. Hormone changes, pregnancy, or aging can lead to weight gain and challenges that aren't your fault. That's why I believe so strongly in what we do at Bell Sculpt. I've had a procedure myself, and it transformed more than just my shape. It boosted my energy, metabolism, and confidence. If you're ready to feel like yourself again, Bell Sculpt is here to help. Book your free consultation at bellsculpt.fm.
The latest news 24/7. News Talk KVNU 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home.
Is your mom or dad struggling to get in and out of their chair? Hi, I'm Jay Broadbent with Alpine Home Medical. We've seen it happen for years. As customers come into our store and they've had a recent fall, they're finally ready to ask for some help. Don't wait until you're injured. We have everything you need to avoid the fall before it happens. Now until the end of February, we're running a deal that we think you're going to love. When you purchase a lift chair, you can unlock 10% off your entire purchase. Get side tables, canes, shower chairs, walkers, and even ramps. We're open Monday through Friday. We've got stores from Idaho Falls to St. George and now in Tooele. Come into any one of our 11 locations and let us help you. Find us online at alpinehomemedical.com.
Alpine Home Medical, we bring wellness home. It's been a mystery. We still they try to see why something good can hurt so bad. Caught on a one-way street, the taste of bittersweet. Love will survive somehow, somewhere. One love feeds the fire. One heart.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show. It's still Thursday, February 20th. Thanks again to Charlie Schill for spending the first hour with us for the For the People Theater Hour. But a big thank you to our next guest. I'm excited to talk about this because it is, regardless of your political affiliation or which party you consider yourself belonging to, or lack thereof if you're an unaffiliated voter. One of the things that you'll hear a lot about these days, both major parties dealing with it, political scientists trying to wrap their head around it, but there is concern because there is evidence, growing evidence, that young people are kind of checked out, for lack of a better phrase. They've lost faith in the institutions and the parties and the political process, and it sometimes creates a challenge to get young people involved. The problem with that is, of course, young people become voters, and without informed voters, well, you have one of two things happening: bad decisions being made by voters, uninformed decisions, or even worse, actually, you have no one voting or a low number of people voting. So there's interest on a lot of different fronts on getting young people engaged, figuring out how to keep them engaged and more. And there have been rays of hope. There's been some really bright moments of activism on certain social media platforms, even TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, that have, a lot of the political scientists researching this, feeling that maybe the future is brighter than it looked when it comes to young people. Anyway, that's my attempt to set the stage for our special guest joining us this hour. In the studio with us right now, we have Julie Rudie, and she is heading up a project working with the Cache Republican Party known as Cache TARS. And TARS stands for Teenage Republicans. So the Cache Teenage Republicans Project is an ongoing effort to engage people at a very young age, not just in politics and the news, but the caucus and convention process, the delegate and precinct process, to help people understand how representation works, and even ways to get involved and directly communicate with elected officials from the city level up to the state legislature. So, Julie, appreciate you taking some time to join us here today. And I have to say, anyone that is volunteering to work with people of a young age group is brave these days, because
thank you. I appreciate that.
I imagine it can be a bit like herding cats, right?
Sometimes.
This is so how long have you been involved with the group?
I've been taking care of this group for a year now.
Very nice. I've noticed in that time that the group has been hosting events and trying to drum up some excitement to get young people involved. And you mentioned before we started, this is specifically targeted at the 13 to 18-year-old age group. What's the goal? What's the purpose?
The goal is just to teach the young people, like you just spoke of, about our Republican Party and their freedoms, and maybe how our government works at the state and a federal area as well. We do an activity every month, and we try and have the activities be an active activity, not just sitting in a classroom listening to a lecture.
Sure.
Like last year, we went to the Capitol for the day, and we were able to have a tour and speak with different elected leaders that we have put into office, and that was a fun day. There was a time, I think was in November, we met at the Logan Gun Range, and we were able to have a nice conversation with Mike Peterson, and he talked about the Constitution, and we had a gentleman there that was able to talk about gun safety, and all of the kids were able to learn about that and was able to shoot a set of guns that were 22s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a great time.
That's very
all the
cool.
kids enjoyed it. They learned about safety, and that was a good event. And so every month, we try and meet and do something that's engaging. Like in December, we met out in the Lewiston Theater, and we were able to watch the movie Reagan.
Oh, yeah. That was just recently in theaters. I forgot about that.
Yeah. And so we come up with an activity every month. Generally speaking, all of these activities so far have been free unless there's something that they need to cover for their cost. So they're really well taken care of. Turning Point USA has helped take care of some of the funding. Last year, we met out at Lowers in Richmond, and they were able to feed all of us a very nice meal. And then we had a tour of the facility, and then they were able to have an engaged conversation with the group about what happens with their company and how the market works with the laws that are put into effect with Congress.
That's interesting.
I mean, the kids had never thought that what's going on with our laws is affecting this company that's bringing groceries to our stores.
Sure, a small business right here in the valley that is a problem even for adults. I catch myself falling into this these days. A lot of these these issues are news stories on CNN, and it seems removed from what happens here in Logan or in Cache Valley. This is a goal to kind of connect that and get people at a young age thinking about, the the kitchen table effects of what you might see on C-SPAN or in a news story on cable news, right?
That's right.
That is, I have to be honest with you, Julie. I kind of want to shave and see if I can never pass for 18 even, but
You're welcome to come
I
and
want to
try it
sneak
out.
into this next event that you have planned. This sounds so cool, and I've wanted to go do this myself for a long time. Tell everybody about this. This is coming up Monday, right? Monday, February 24th at 6 p.m. The Cache Teenage Republican Group will be hosting, they're calling it Project Reality, and you're going to go tour the jail.
That's correct. Now, I'm
That
not
is
too
so
sure
cool.
to what extent, but we are going to see their facility, and we get to have an open conversation with 5 different inmates and some different deputies. I guess that they do this for different youth groups.
Sure.
And so we've been invited to come do it, and the person I've set this up with has said, have the kids come with different questions, because the conversation can get and go anyway.
Sure.
And so they're like,
Sure.
this is really up to the kids, how they want to make this work.
It'd be
it
so
should be a-
interesting to see where they take it.
Yes, it'll be a fun night. And then because I'm working with children from 13 to 18, a variety of these these children can't drive or get there.
Sure.
So a lot of the parents just stay, and they're welcome to, and they enjoy their time too. And so we've had parents that stay and hang out, and they're more than welcome to.
That is very cool. Yeah, this is something I've actually personally wanted to do for a long time, and I've mentioned it to the sheriff a few times. We've never made it happen, but for those listening, that just gives you a little taste of what being involved with the Cache Teenage Republicans group can mean, and some basic logistical questions for parents out there listening. What does it take to join, or do you just show up?
Well, technically, there's nothing to join right now.
Okay.
It's just a nonprofit organization that the Republican Party is assist me to run, because we're working together in that. And so there's really nothing to join at this time. But everybody's welcome to come our activities. We have one every month. You can reach out to me personally. I'm Julie Rudie, and my phone number is available. You can get information at our current Republican site that we have, because my information's on there.
Oh, sure. I see it. In fact, the Cache Republican Party's website, right at the top, they have a note about the Teenage Republican Group and this upcoming Project Reality tour of the Cache County Jail. And that is right at the top of cachegop.com. And it just says to RSVP, and then has your name, Julian, and your number. So for listeners, easy to get involved in this. And Julie, if you could sort of wave a magic wand, what happens next for these kids if they're involved with a group like Cache TARS, and they obviously go on to either post high school career or college or whatever it might be, a technical school. What would you like to see them do with this experience that they get through the Teenage Republicans group?
Well, the goal is they start to get this liking and mindset to know more, because by the time they get old enough to think about it, or like politics or laws and rules, sort of to speak, the desire is no longer.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't have time to learn about it, because now their life is almost set. So it's really hard to start something new when they've already set it this way.
We've already gotten cynical and jaded by 21,
not
right?
just that, but they've already got plans and they have goals, and they never realized that there was something they were interested in or could accomplish.
Sure.
And so it's like we're planting a seed.
Because these could be, one day, a 14-year-old that's going to go to this event next Monday to tour the Cache County Jail on February 24th at 6 p.m. again is when that's happening. A 14-year-old kid right now in that group could be one day the next person running for the state legislature to represent Cache Valley. That's how that current state lawmakers that talked to Representative Casey Snyder. That's how he got involved.
Yeah, and he's an awesome guy.
Yeah, although we like to make fun of him here on the show. Don't let his head get too big. No, he is a really awesome guy. He's a very smart guy, very curious guy, and he's one of the most thoughtful legislators I think I've ever met, as far as asking questions and learning and being open to new information. And he'll tell you himself that came from getting involved at a very young age and having the curiosity in the process peaked for him. He wanted to know more about how it worked and how, representation worked. That's what the Cache Teenage Republican Group is all about, right?
That's right. And it's just that it's exciting to see how it all works, because a lot of people don't know, or young people don't know, how it's involved. I mean, generally speaking, the children that we went and saw at Lowers, they had no idea that the laws that are being passed at our state capitol is affecting their grocery store.
Yeah.
They just don't think about it. And
Sure.
so you get the circle going.
And again, this is something that adults face as well. It's not unique to those age 13 to 18. And as adults, I think we like to pretend this doesn't happen to us. But you do get caught up in your daily life, and and it's just a news story or a headline, but you aren't connecting that to the price of your favorite food at a grocery store, or even food at the grocery store being there in the first place sometimes. I love these efforts to get young people involved at a young age, even in this case, of course, before they would be able to vote, because the more they know about the process, the more they're going to understand how all this works. When they read the news, they'll be able to make those connections. And I have to ask, Julie, before we wrap this up here today, what is and I don't want to embarrass any kid, anything like that, but I'm sure everyone listening right now thinks, what is the best question you've been asked by one of the kids involved? Because that to me is fascinating, how kids process the news or the politics that we see going on around us. Have there been any just really insightful questions or funny questions?
Not that's been given to me, because when we're doing something, there's always somebody that's taking care of the questions. Like Mike Peterson talked about the Constitution. So he was on the spot, so they didn't ask me questions. And the gentleman that was taking care of the gun safety, he was answering questions. The owner of Lowers was taking care of the questions. So I don't know necessarily if I've been put out on the spot of asking me a hard question. I mean, I've had questions like, where are we meeting, and fun stuff like that, but nothing that would make your brain like, oh my, that's something we should talk about.
It's really interesting, because sometimes young people, especially in politics, will just be shockingly insightful. And it's fascinating. So I hope that's another effect of this group, that, because influence always works two ways, and sometimes young people can influence us as adults. And for listeners, get involved. This is, again, it's free. The events are open to everyone, although they are structured and geared towards teenagers, so ages 13 to 18 specifically. And it's the Cache TARS program, the Cache County Republican Party's Teenage Republicans program. Their next event is coming up this Monday, February 24th at 6 p.m. It's called Project Reality, and they're going to go out and tour the facilities at the Cache County Jail, have discussions with deputies and inmates there at the jail, and there is a dessert bar that will be included afterwards. All you have to do is RSVP, so they know who's coming and how many. And is there, I should ask, is there a cutoff on that RSVP? Is there a time you need to know by before Monday?
No, just as soon as you can.
As long as,
I mean, we can ballpark.
Try not to make it 10 minutes before 6 p.m. on Monday, right?
We'll still take you. It's all good.
We'll still take you, but you'll be a headache at that point. RSVP information right at the top of the Cache County Republican Party's homepage, cachegop.com. And our guest again has been Julie Rudie, one of the organizers of the nonprofit Cache TARS program. And again, the event coming up this Monday, 6 p.m., Project Reality. They're going to go take a bunch of young people out, tour the jail, talk with inmates and deputies and more, and give them a chance to ask questions about all of this, hoping to get young people involved and interested in not just politics, but the political process, the delegate and convention process here in Utah, how representation works, all of these things, a part of these ongoing conversations. So again, join them this Monday, February 24th at 6 p.m., Project Reality. Take a tour of the jail and more, and you can RSVP before Monday via the information Julie has posted at cachegop.com. And Julie, thank you for coming down.
Well, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to spotlight this, and we should talk again soon. In fact, maybe we can get some of the kids in one day, and they can talk about their experience. For listeners, thank you for being with us as well. Stick around. More of For the People to come right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
From the land you love to the jobs you do, This time of year, the farms, ranches, and fields might be quiet, but if you make your living off the land, the real work is just getting started. Now is the perfect time to prepare for the busy spring ahead. Cache Equipment can service or repair almost any tractor, make, or model. Don't wait until the fields are calling. Beat the spring rush. Visit Cache Equipment in Hyde Park and online at cacheequipment.com.
Cache Equipment's here to see you through.
Hi, this is Jeff John, head golf professional at Logan River Golf Course. I want to thank everybody for supporting us this year in the 2024 Best of Northern Utah contest.
Best of Northern Utah.
The Murdoch Auto Team is celebrating 100 years of winter journeys at Murdoch Chevrolet.
And we want to be a part of your next adventure, whether you're heading to the mountains for a quick ski run or embarking on a snowy weekend getaway.
Right now, take up to $6,250 off at 2024 Equinox or come see the all-new 2025 Equinox.
When you walk through our doors, you feel like family.
At Murdoch Chevrolet in Logan and Woods Cross or online at murdochchev.com. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
Call 888-391-6083 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 3/3/2025.
Got a fundraiser, charity drive, or nonprofit event coming up? Let us help spread the word. Send the details to calendar@cvradio.com and we'll share it with our community. From bake sales to benefit concerts to community celebrations, Cache Valley Media Group is here to amplify your efforts. We're proud to support the people and causes that make our community stronger. Email calendar@cvradio.com today and let's build a better, more connected community, one event at a time.
Mama, I found someone like you said would come along. He's a sight so unlike any man I've known. I was afraid to let him in, 'cause I'm not the trusting kind. But now I'm convinced that he's heaven sent and must be out of his mind. Mama, he's crazy, crazy over me. And in my life is where he says he always wants to be. I've never been so loved. He beats all I've ever seen. And Mama, he's crazy. He's crazy over me. And Mama, you've always said better look before you leave. Maybe so, but here I go, letting my heart lead me. He thinks I hung the moon and stars. I think he's a living dream. Well, there are many, but ones like him are few.
Welcome back to KBN News for the People. Thanks again to Julie Rudie for stopping by. One more time, the Cache Teenage Republicans group is free. It's open to everyone, really, but this is a group geared towards getting those age 13 and 18 curious about politics and the political processes. And an example of what they do, coming up Monday at 6 p.m., February 24th, they are taking a bunch of young people on a tour of the Cache County Jail. They'll have a chance to tour the facilities, but also sit down and have discussions with deputies, current inmates, and connect all of this to the headlines and the public policy debates that you see in the news as an adult all day long. So pretty cool opportunity for young people to be able to do this. And again, it is free. They do ask that you RSVP for any event, so they know how many people are coming. But and you can do that via the information right at the top of the homepage of the Cache Republican Party's website, cachegop.com. There's a phone number there where you can RSVP and let them know how many kids you'll be sending or if you'll be attending with them. And pretty cool project that the Cache Republican Party has going. So, all right. Appreciate our listeners tuning in. On the other side, we're a couple days late on this, but this week's sneak preview of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas and your legislative update for Thursday, November 20th. All of that after this look at the news with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Well, thank you, Jason. It turns out Utahns may not be seeing a tax cut. Senator Jerry Stevenson, a chief budget writer at the Capitol, said it's not exactly a tragedy yet, but he said that the $160 million that was set aside for a tax cut still may be so, but it's yet to be seen. Senator Liz Camilla said that they've been very clear on a Social Security tax cut, and they would like to see it move forward. Now, eliminating state income taxes on Social Security retirement benefits has been one of Governor Spencer Cox's top priorities. Senate President Stuart Adams said yesterday a tax cut is still on the table, but he would not call it for certain. Now, the projected revenue is said to be about $74 million less than expected in one-time money and $38 million less in ongoing money. With state surpluses of roughly $1 billion in some recent years, Republican lawmakers have chipped away at some income tax, their favorite target for reductions. Meanwhile, an 85-year-old man died in a three-vehicle crash that happened near Montpelier yesterday. The crash was reported around 1:20 p.m. According to the Idaho State Police, a Kenworth semi-truck that was driven by a 39-year-old man and a 49-year-old woman passenger from Washington had stopped in the eastbound lanes of US 30 and was waiting for a crash to be cleared. Now, a Lincoln MKC, driven by an 85-year-old woman with an 85-year-old male passenger, both from Georgetown, Idaho, had stopped behind the semi when a white Freightliner, driven by a 42-year-old man from Las Vegas, failed to yield for the stopped vehicles. Now, that Freightliner collided with the Lincoln, pushing the vehicle into the left shoulder. It then collided into the Kenworth's trailer, where it came to a rest. Now, police report the driver and passenger of the Lincoln were transported by ground ambulance to a local hospital, where the man later succumbed to his injuries. The roadway was closed for about 10 hours as crews cleared that crash. And the second presentation in Utah State University's Science Unwrapped Spring 2025 series is coming up tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, in the Emmert Auditorium and the Eccles Science and Learning Center. Now, Josh Lively, a paleontologist at USU Eastern's Prehistoric Museum, will be presenting what he calls Terrific Terrible Lizards, the Age of Dinosaurs and Beyond in eastern Utah. Now, during his presentation, Lively is likely once again to express his support for the Utah Mammoth to be the ideal name for Utah's new National Hockey League team. Now, in a recent TV interview, he said that it's uniquely Utah because of the 1988 discovery of the remains in Utah's Huntington Canyon of a Columbian mammoth, which is larger and stronger than a woolly mammoth. Now, Friday's presentation will be the second of the Science Unwrapped Spring series, celebrating undergraduate research. Following Lively's presentation, USU student groups will be leading hands-on learning activities, followed by refreshments. Well, quite a bit of snow from today, as now we're going to see cloudy skies overnight as temperatures been in the mid-30s today. Tonight we're going to drop into the mid-20s with cloudy skies overnight. A mix of sun and clouds tomorrow as temperatures are going to be into the low 40s. And then we'll continue to see a mix of sun and clouds Saturday and Sunday, with temperatures staying in the low 40s as well. Still looking at some warmer weather coming on Monday when we could be in the low 50s. And news and weather this hour brought to you by Quality First Insurance. Matt Robbins can help you take care of your employee benefit package. It's Matt Robbins, Quality First Insurance, and I'm Will Theorite with your KVNU News Update.
ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. President Trump's about to speak at the Republican Governors Association meeting in Washington, just hours after a federal judge denied a request by labor unions to temporarily block the Trump administration from carrying out mass firings of probationary employees and buyouts. It's a technical issue. The judge says the unions need to bring their case to another venue. New York City Mayor Eric Adams keeps his job for now. Governor Kathy Hochul says she won't remove him from office, but instead asks state lawmakers for more oversight of City Hall.
Those who argue just go and remove them fail to appreciate there is a process involved, due process, the length of the process, and the impact that such a process would have on this city.
After forensic tests, one of the 4 bodies handed over from Gaza to Israel today does not include a hostage, says the Israeli military, calls it a very serious violation by Hamas. This is ABC News.
We start each new year filled with hope and prosperity for things to come. At Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, it's no different. Dr. Daines is so grateful to get to call Cache Valley home and continue to offer his services to the wonderful people that live in our beautiful valley. He wants to help you start your new year off right by improving your hearing, which over the course of time will help improve your quality of life. Give them a call at 435-753-4327 or 753-HERE to schedule an appointment, or you can visit them online at CacheValleyHearing.com.
Cache Valley, get ready to rock. This year's Cache Valley Cruise in Concert is bringing you 2 legendary rock bands. Opening the stage, the high-energy rock band Lit. It's no surprise to me, I am my own worst enemy. Lit. And headlining the night, the multi-platinum powerhouse Fuel. Tickets are on sale now at the Cache Valley Cruise-In website or in store at Lee's Marketplace. 2 epic rock bands, one night, Thursday, July 3rd. Lit, Fuel, rocking the night for this year's Cache Valley Cruise-In concert. The Cache Valley Cruise-In. Guys, music, and memories you don't want to miss. Grab your tickets now at Lee's Marketplace or online at the Cache Valley Cruise-In website.
Water getting inside your home? Driveway cracking? Your deck need cleaning or sealing? Hey, Gary Sullivan here from At Home with Gary Sullivan. I can help you with those home improvement projects each weekend right here. In fact, we'll take your calls about your home issues and give you solutions. We'll tell you how to fix it, what to use, and where to get it. We'll also have expert guests to help you with your projects. Hope you can join us this weekend right here on At Home with Gary Sullivan.
Saturday nights at 7 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. A couple of days late on this. Normally do this Tuesday afternoons, but still getting it in. Our listeners each week get a sneak preview of Sutherland Institute's new episode of Defending Ideas, their online show, where they spend an hour talking about, well, everything, Utah policy. And literally, I mean everything. This week, though, in the sneak peek, you're going to hear about something that most parents, I think, have heard of. Most others, especially new parents, haven't quite wrapped their heads around yet. It is known as Utah's open enrollment law for schools and for the public school system. And the goal of the open enrollment law here in Utah is to engage parents and empower parents in the process. But Sutherland Institute, specifically their guest this week, Khalif Faulkner, who is senior legislative drafter with an organization called Yes Every Kid, and Christine Cook Fairbanks, who is the education policy fellow at Sutherland for a few years now, they sit down to talk about some suggestions they have to innovate a bit when it comes to open enrollment, ways that the goals of open enrollment and empowering parents and engaging parents in the legislative process could be better or more thoroughly met. It's this week's sneak peek, a look at Sutherland Institute's weekly Defending Ideas.
This is an issue, of course, that in recent years has picked up a lot of steam. I mean, there have been many years-long conversations around education choice and charter schools and homeschooling and different models, but especially in recent years, really since the pandemic, Christine, this is something you've written about a lot, that there has been quite an acceleration all across the country of states passing different education choice legislation, advancing in these policy areas. And Hallie, you've been involved in this with your all Yes Every Kid. And I want to kind of elevate the conversation around open enrollment for our audience. Before we jump into that, could I just ask you, just give an overview of Yes Every Kid for our audience who may not be familiar with your organization?
Yeah, so we are an advocacy organization. We're active in most states, but not all. And we, at our core, advocate for policies that empower families and, like you said, can put families in the driver's seat when it comes to choosing the education that works best for their kids.
Thank you. Well, it's, as we've articulated, it's such an important issue because, and this is one of the things I appreciate about Christine's work and writing on this, is there really is this opportunity and need to, again, elevate this idea of the parent-teacher partnership, and that parents and families kind of being the chief arbiters, if you will, of their kids' care and upbringing and education. And that's a principle that we found a lot of resonance with here in Utah as well, which has been really fortunate. So, Hallie, I want to ask you, education choice is usually framed as something that's kind of, outside the traditional K-12 school model. When people talk about education choice, sometimes it's in the context of, well, parents want alternatives to the traditional K-12 school, and so they look to things like micro schools or homeschooling or charter schools or other private options. Again, a number of which can be great options, and as Christine has articulated well before, should all be viewed as part of the education system. But I want to ask you, this issue specifically, when we're talking about open enrollment, this is actually a way of having the principle of education choice be sort of still part of the traditional K-12 system. And I wonder if you could just expand on that. How do you view open enrollment in the context of the education choice debate?
It's a great question. So, if we look at the two states that I think are have been leaders for a long time in giving families choice, Arizona and Florida, what we see is that in both of those states, almost 10% of their students are attending a public school outside of their zoned boundary, right? And so open enrollment through an open enrollment program. Open enrollment is a really important piece of the puzzle when it comes to empowering parents with choice. And I like how you frame this idea of like a choice landscape, right? Because in both Arizona and Florida, there's open enrollment, allowing parents to cross school district boundaries. There are charter schools, right? Public charter schools that parents can apply to if they're a good fit for their kiddos. They have education savings accounts, right, for parents who want to use that public funding for their kids to get educated outside of the public school system. There are micro schools, as you imagine. There's support for homeschooling families. And then in this kind of rich choice environment is where we see the entire education landscape really start to thrive. And I know that test scores are certainly not the best way or the only way to measure that kind of thriving, but certainly in Arizona, which has had open enrollment longer than any other state, families across the board from all different racial and ethnic backgrounds, from all different economic backgrounds, are seeing their kids learn more year to year than families actually in any other state, if you measure it by the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So I think you're right that open enrollment is an important piece of the puzzle, right, when we're talking about choice. And part of the reason it's such an important piece of the puzzle is because in most states, about 90% of families in most states, about 90% of kids attend public school. So if we're looking at choice just outside of that 90%, it's actually kind of myopic. Like we're limiting what's possible. And so open enrollment is one way to dramatically increase the number of choices and options available to families. And because I'm a policy nerd, I will just define quickly open enrollment. For those of you who are new to this concept, open enrollment is simply the idea that any kid who lives in a state should be able to apply to and attend any school in the state.
Christine, I love your take on one of the things I've heard in recent years in education policy debates, specifically when things like Utah's Utah Fits All scholarship comes up as a proposal. I've heard at times some people push back and say, well, you're saying we need education choice, but we've already got charter schools and private schools, and we already have open enrollment, so we already have education choice. We don't need these other programs. I'm curious to how you would respond to that. To me, it sounds like kind of a flawed way to, again, pit these things against one another. But what would be your take on that? How do you view these things in sort of a more holistic way?
I agree that Utah does have choice, has some choices, and a lot of those are working quite well. But I think it's also sort of a concession that choice is a good thing. that we already have what we do, right? We understand that families want charter schools. We understand that sometimes parents want to transfer their kids to a different district school. Sometimes they're looking for homeschool resources or a private school, way to get to a private school. So if it really is that broad, and the concept of choice is really a principle and not synonymous with a particular public policy, and we have the buy-in that that's a good thing, I would say, why not expand that? Why be hesitant to look at new alternatives, new pathways? Because I think at the end of the day, we can agree that these are good because the focus is on students. Whatever they need, let's find a way to get them there in terms of education or a specific school.
Hallie, why should we articulate open enrollment as good? I mean, there's so much, again, debate and discussion. Again, we've had years now of track records of states passing various kind of education choice and scholarship policies. Why do you think open enrollment is something that parents still want? Like, what's if you were pitching it to someone who wasn't familiar with it, what's the argument that, well, open enrollment existing, expanding, being improved is a good thing for families for this reason? What do you think is the most compelling message?
The nice thing about open enrollment, which makes my job easier, is that it actually polls really well. What we've seen in national polls and state-specific polls is that somewhere between 80 and 85% of people, adults, across all different types of demographics, really support the idea that kids should be able to go to the public school that meets their needs. I think it's kind of a common sense policy in that if their parents are tax-paying citizens in a state, their students should be able to go to a public school that gives them the best education possible. We unfortunately have become used to the idea that in America we have to pay for our kids to get a good education. You have to either pay for a private school or you have to be able to buy or rent within a certain school district boundary. And, the pandemic, as you mentioned, nudged us to think differently about education and these kind of rigid box that we have put ourselves and our kids in. And when we kind of step back and think logically about it, it doesn't actually make that much sense that where we go to school is so closely tied to where we live. And whether we live on, the west side or the east side of that street, having such a serious impact, right, on the really the rest of our lives. So, open enrollment, I think, is a common sense policy once we kind of pause and step back. But, it's a policy that requires a bit of creative thinking.
I want to toss out some things, maybe by way of playing devil's advocate for a little bit, just to help our audience understand what are some good responses to maybe some questions or potential criticisms of either the creation of or expansion of an open enrollment policy. And the first one that comes to mind, and I'm curious to both of you if this argument has been made at all in open enrollment, but I recall conversations around other education choice programs. Christine, I'm thinking specifically of the the Utah Fits All policy and things like that over the years here and in other states. One of the criticisms you often hear is, well, if this is going to lead to a drain from our public schools, that the families with, the means, the wherewithal will leave, and it will harm the public schools that they are leaving from. Does anyone ever make that argument? One, I think we've dispelled that argument pretty well in those other education choice programs, but does anyone make that argument in open enrollment? In other words, are there any concerns that a lot of families might use open enrollment to leave one particular school and go to nicer schools, more well-funded schools? Does that cause any concern? And if so, what's the right way to address those concerns?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one of the more common questions I get, Christine. I'll be curious to hear if you hear this as well. But there are a couple of things that we like to share with stakeholders who are considering creating or expanding open enrollment programs. And one of the things is that the states that create open enrollment or expand open enrollment, they see families start to use open enrollment in kind of a gradual way.
Again, that was a sneak preview of this week's episode of Sutherland Institute's Defending Ideas, a lengthy discussion on open enrollment. Again, a bit different, as they explained, than the school choice or the school voucher movement, taking money originally intended for public schools and putting it towards vouchers that can be used for private schools. The open enrollment is literally just the ability to move around in a school district, whether that be to a private or public charter school or to homeschool within the district while still taking part in extracurricular activities, or your students still taking part in extracurricular activities, or whether that's just moving from one district to another. Open enrollment is legal here in Utah, though there are some guardrails. And as you heard there, Christine and Holly and Nick as host discussing ways that the open enrollment law here in Utah can be beefed up a little bit. So check it out. The full episode can be heard at sutherlandinstitute.org, and keep an eye on this conversation at large. No bill specifically related to this so far in the session, but it is something that even Cache Valley lawmakers have been talking about a lot as Cache Valley grows. We'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Hi, Cache Valley. This is Dan Newmeyer at Blue Sky Restoration, formerly ARS. Do you know what to do if you are experiencing water flooding inside your home? First, make sure everyone is safe, turn off the water, and call Blue Sky. Do you know where the water shutoff is at in your home? If you don't, call Blue Sky and we'll send out a representative for free to help you find it and tag it so you can be prepared if an emergency arises. Remember Blue Sky, restoring your property and your life for a brighter tomorrow.
Here's what some of our patients have to say about how Red River has changed their lives.
So before I started at Red River, I was having a lot of stomach pain. I was overweight, severe anxiety. I had been to multiple doctors. We had done tests and no one could find anything that was wrong. And then a friend mentioned Red River and I went and saw him, and it has changed my whole life. I'm sleeping through the night. I have energy for my kids. I've lost 30 pounds. No more stomach pains. I just feel really good.
Our goal is to focus on imbalances that are driving your condition or symptoms, not just give you Band-Aid answers. So when a patient comes to our office, we'll sit down with them extensively and go over their blood work to find out the underlying imbalances driving their symptoms.
Call Red River Health and Wellness at 855-55-RIVER. with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
Call Red River today.
From the land you love to the jobs you do.
This time of year, the farms, ranches, and fields might be quiet, but if you make your living off the land, the real work is just getting started. Now is the perfect time to prepare for the busy spring ahead. Cache Equipment can service or repair almost any tractor, make, or model. Don't wait until the fields are calling. Beat the spring rush. Visit Cache Equipment in Hyde Park and online at cacheequipment.com.
Cache Equipment's here to see you through.
Utah lawmakers today unveiling their more real-time revenue numbers, and the news was not great. A down budget is what Utah lawmakers are facing. Negative revenue estimates. Most of this coming from previous income tax cuts, cutting into the state's revenue a bit further than lawmakers had anticipated, though critics said, we warned you. And that means there may be no tax cut this year. Governor Cox had proposed removing entirely the state's portion of any taxes on those on Social Security. And that might not happen now with these revenue numbers that we saw this week. But nothing is set in stone yet. And Senator Jerry Stevenson, who kind of heads up the appropriations and budgeting process in the Utah State Senate, had this to say today.
There's a lot of things going on, and we're just really on the front end of the budget. Well, I think we'll know a lot more by Tuesday of next week. We'll, what's coming together, but we're just really on the front end of this. We spent all day yesterday and today, but it's there's a lot of moving parts in this right now.
In December, we did something that we haven't done. We've kind of done it over the last few years, but for the 5 or 6 years before that, we didn't do it. And typically we get revenues, and I think there were several $100 million of new revenue, what we saw in December. And some people say, well, that's a lot of money to spend. But we took the big rocks out. We took the 4% WPU. We took the 2 to 3% increase for our state employees out. And hasn't been funded yet, but we've kind of held it in reserve. So we're anticipating that those numbers stay the same, that we did that in December. Is that right, Senator?
That's right. Well, we did some other things. We took a shot at the WPU, made sure that was at least partially covered. Hopefully,
4%.
But there's a lot we have already done but that's probably one of the reasons we have less to work with also.
All right. So Transparent Utah shows salary levels for all state employees.
Sure.
And legislative aides, including Senate aides, have had very large increases, 30%, 20% a year, and they're making high salaries.
Who?
Legislative aides, aides in your own office. Yeah. So why are those salaries at that level, and why those increases when state employees are getting 2 to 3%?
They're probably trying to balance out legislative wages, don't you think?
President,
go ahead.
Over the past 12 years that I've been involved in appropriations, we have always had areas that have shown deficit. In other words, we have not raised quick enough, and across the board raised with as many positions as we have doesn't always fit. Because when we have sometimes positions in the private sector, they demand more, and we have to go back in and do corrections. And we're doing corrections this year. We've got 3 or 4 different agencies that we're way below on, and they will show a greater increase than will the state employee.
Things getting a little tense in the Senate availability today. And again, this was in response to revenue numbers and word that lawmakers are likely putting a nix on any tax cut this year. And in the midst of that, news today that legislative staff salaries had been increased quietly by lawmakers. It is what it is. You got to pay people, right? But lawmakers a little concerned about some of the down revenue numbers.